Wimbledon is a suburban district of southwest London, England, in the London Borough of Merton, located south of Wandsworth, east of Kingston upon Thames, west of Mitcham and north of Sutton. It is situated within Greater London. It is home to the Wimbledon Tennis Championships and new Wimbledon Theatre, and contains Wimbledon Common, one of the largest areas of common land in London. The residential area is split into two sections known as the Village, and the Town, with the High Street being part of the original medieval village, and the Town being part of the modern development since the building of the railway station in 1838. Wimbledon has been inhabited since at least the Iron Age, when the hill fort on Wimbledon Common is thought to have been constructed. In 1087, when the Domesday Book was compiled, Wimbledon was part of the Manor of Mortlake. The ownership of the Manor of Wimbledon changed between various wealthy families many times during its history, and the area also attracted other wealthy families who built large houses such as Eagle House, Wimbledon House and Warren House. The village developed with a stable rural population coexisting alongside nobility and wealthy merchants from the city. In the 18th century, the Dog and Fox public house became a stop on the stagecoach run from London to Portsmouth. Then in 1838 the London and South Western Railway opened a station to the southeast of the village at the bottom of Wimbledon Hill. The location of the station shifted the focus of the town's subsequent growth away from the original village centre. Wimbledon had its own borough of Wimbledon and was within the county of Surrey. It was absorbed into the London Borough of Merton as part of the creation of Greater London in 1965. It is in the parliamentary constituency of Wimbledon, and since 2005 it has been represented by Conservative MP Stephen Hammond. History. Early history. Wimbledon has been inhabited since at least the Iron Age, when the hill fort on Wimbledon Common is thought to have been constructed. The original centre of Wimbledon was at the top of the hill close to the Common, the area now known locally as the Village. The village is referred to as ʻwɪmbəldən in a charter signed by King Edgar the Peaceful in 967. The name Wimbledon means Wineman's Hill, with the final element of the name being the Old English dun. The name is shown on J. Carey's 1786 map of the London area as Wimbledon, and the current spelling appears to have been settled on relatively recently in the early 19th century, the last in a long line of variations. At the time the Domesday Book was compiled, Wimbledon was part of the Manor of Mortlake, and so was not recorded. The ownership of the Manor of Wimbledon changed hands many times during its history. The manor was held by the church until 1398, when Thomas Arundel, Archbishop of Canterbury, fell out of favour with Richard II and was exiled. The manor was confiscated and became Crown property. The manor remained Crown property until the reign of Henry VIII, when it was granted briefly to Thomas Cromwell, Earl of Essex, until Cromwell was executed in 1540 and the land was again confiscated. The manor was next held by Henry VIII's last wife and widow Catherine Parr until her death in 1548, when it again reverted to the monarch. In the 1550s, Henry's daughter, Mary I, granted the manor to Cardinal Reginald Pole, who held it until his death in 1558, when it once again became royal property. Mary's sister, Elizabeth I, held the property until 1574, when she gave the Manor House to Christopher Hatton, who sold it in the same year to Sir Thomas Cecil, Earl of Exeter. The lands of the manor were given to the Cecil family in 1588 and a new manor house, Wimbledon House, was constructed and gardens laid out in the formal Elizabethan style. 17th century, Wimbledon's convenient proximity to the capital was beginning to attract other wealthy families, and in 1613 Robert Bell, master of the Worshipful Company of Girdlers and a director of the British East India Company, built Eagle House as a home at an easy distance from London. The Cecil family retained the manor for 50 years before it was bought by Charles I in 1638 for his queen, Henrietta Maria. Following the king's execution in 1649, the manor passed rapidly through various parliamentarian ownerships, including Leeds MP Adam Baines and Civil War General John Lambert, but, following the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, was back in the ownership of Henrietta Maria. The Dowager Queen sold the manor in 1661 to George Digby, Earl of Bristol, who employed John Evelyn to improve and update the landscape in accordance with the latest fashions, including grottos and fountains. On his death in 1677 the manor was sold on again to the Lord High Treasurer, Thomas Osborne, Earl of Danby. The Osborne family sold the manor to Sir Theodore Jansen in 1712. Jansen, a director of the South Sea Company, began a new house to replace the Cecil-built Manor House but, due to the spectacular collapse of the company, never finished it. Your next owner was Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, who increased the land belonging to the manor and completed the construction of a house to replace Jansen's unfinished effort in 1735. On her death in 1744, the property passed to her grandson, John Spencer, and subsequently to the first Earl Spencer. The village continued to grow and the introduction in the 18th century of stagecoach services from the Dog and Fox public house made the journey to London routine, although not without the risk of being held up by highwaymen such as Jerry Abershaw on the Portsmouth Road. The stagecoach horses would be stabled at the rear of the pub in the now named Wimbledon Village Stables. The 1735 Manor House burnt down in the 1780s and was replaced with Wimbledon Park House in 1801 by the second Earl. At this time the manor lands included Wimbledon Common and the enclosed parkland around the Manor House. The area of the park corresponded to the modern Wimbledon Park area. The house was situated to the east of St Mary's Church. Wimbledon House, a separate residence close to the village at the south end of Parkside, was home in the 1790s to the exiled French statesman Vicomte de Calonne, and later to the mother of writer Frederick Marryat. Their association with the area is recorded in the names of nearby Calonne and Marryat roads. To the south of the Common, the early 18th century Warren House was home to a series of grand residences. 19th century development. The first decades of the 19th century were relatively quiet for Wimbledon, with a stable rural population coexisting alongside nobility and wealthy merchants from the city, but renewed upheaval came in 1838 when the opening of the London and South Western Railway brought a station to the southeast of the village at the bottom of Wimbledon Hill. The location of the station shifted the focus of the town's subsequent growth away from the original village centre. For a number of years Wimbledon Park was leased to the Duke of Somerset, who briefly in the 1820s employed a young Joseph Paxton as one of his gardeners, but, in the 1840s, the Spencer family sold the park as building land. A period of residential development began with the construction of large detached houses in the north of the park. In 1864, the Spencers attempted to get parliamentary permission to enclose the common for the creation of a new park with a house and gardens and to sell part for building. Following an inquiry, permission was refused and a board of conservators was established in 1871 to take ownership of the common and preserve it in its natural condition. Transport links expanded further with new railway lines to Croydon and Tooting. The Metropolitan District Railway extended its service over new tracks from Putney in 1889. In the second half of the century, Wimbledon experienced a very rapid expansion of its population. From a small base of just under 2,700 residents recorded in the 1851 census, the population grew by a minimum of 60% each decade up to 1901, increasing 15-fold in 50 years. During this time large numbers of villas and terraced houses were built along the roads from the centre towards neighbouring Putney, Merton Park and Rains Park. The commercial and civic development of the town also accelerated during this period. Ely's department store opened in 1876 and shops began to stretch along the Broadway towards Merton. Wimbledon got its first police station in 1870, situated in Victoria Crescent. Cultural developments included a literary institute by the early 1860s and the opening of Wimbledon Library in 1887. The religious needs of the growing population were dealt with by a church building programme starting with the rebuilding of St Mary's Church in 1849 and the construction of Christ Church and Trinity Church. Street names reflect the period: Denmark Road and Denmark Avenue, and the Alexandra pub on Wimbledon Hill, all mark the marriage of the then Prince of Wales to Princess Alexandra of Denmark. The change of character of Wimbledon from village to small town was recognised in 1894 when, under the Local Government Act 1894, it formed the Wimbledon Urban District with an elected council. Modern history. Wimbledon's population continued to grow at the start of the 20th century, a condition recognised in 1905 when the urban district was incorporated as the Municipal Borough of Wimbledon, with the power to select a mayor. By the end of the first decade of the new century, Wimbledon had established the beginnings of the Wimbledon School of Art at the Gladstone Road Technical Institute and acquired its first cinema and a theatre. Somewhat unusually, at its opening the theatre's facilities included a Turkish baths. In 1931 the council built itself a new red brick and Portland stone town hall next to the station on the corner of Queen's Road and Wimbledon Bridge. The architects were Bradshaw, Garth and Hope. By the 1930s residential expansion had peaked in Wimbledon and the new focus for local growth had moved to neighbouring Morden, which had remained rural until the arrival of the Underground at Morden Station in 1926. Wimbledon Station was rebuilt by Southern Railway with a simple Portland stone facade for the opening of a new railway branch line from Wimbledon to Sutton. The Wimbledon to Sutton line opened in 1930. Damage to housing stock in Wimbledon and other parts of London during the Second World War led to the final major building phase when many of the earlier Victorian houses built with large grounds in Wimbledon Park were subdivided into apartments or demolished and replaced with apartment blocks. Other parts of Wimbledon Park which had previously escaped being built upon saw local authority estates constructed by the Borough Council to house some of those who had lost their homes. In 1965, the London Government Act 1963 abolished the Municipal Borough of Wimbledon, the Merton and Morden Urban District and the Municipal Borough of Mitcham, and in their place created the London Borough of Merton. Initially, the new borough's administrative centre was at Wimbledon Town Hall, but this moved to the 14-storey Crown House in Morden in the early 1990s. 54 Parkside is the location of the Roman Catholic Apostolic Nunciature to Great Britain. During the 1970s and 1980s, Wimbledon Town Centre struggled to compete commercially with the more developed centres at Kingston and Sutton. Part of the problem was the shortage of locations for large anchor stores to attract customers. After a number of years in which the council seemed unable to find a solution, the Centre Court Shopping Centre was developed on land next to the station, providing the much-needed focus for retail expansion. The shopping centre incorporated the old Town Hall building. A new portico, in keeping with the old work, was designed by Sir George Grenfell Baines, who had worked on the original designs over 50 years earlier. Geography: Wimbledon lies in the southwest area of London, south of Wandsworth, and east of Kingston upon Thames on the outskirts of Greater London. It is 7 miles southwest of the centre of London at Charing Cross. It is considered an affluent suburb with a mix of grand Victorian houses, modern housing and low-rise apartments. The residential area is split into two sections known as the village and the town, with the village, near the Common, centred around the High Street, being part of the original medieval village, and now a prime residential area of London commanding high prices, and the town being part of the modern development, centred around the Broadway, since the building of the railway station in 1838. The area is identified in the London Plan as one of 35 major centres in Greater London. The population consists around 57,000 adults, the majority in the ABC1 social group. The population grew from around 1,000 at the start of the 19th century to around 55,000 in 1911, a figure which has remained reasonably stable since. Governance: at the time the Domesday Book was compiled, Wimbledon was part of the Manor of Mortlake. From 1328 to 1536 a manor of Wimbledon was recorded as belonging to the Archbishop of Canterbury. The ownership of the Manor of Wimbledon changed hands many times during its history. Wimbledon had its own borough of Wimbledon and was within the county of Surrey. It was absorbed into the London Borough of Merton as part of the creation of Greater London in 1965. It is in the parliamentary constituency of Wimbledon, and since 2005 it has been represented by Conservative MP Stephen Hammond. In 2012 the businesses in Wimbledon voted for the introduction of a business improvement district. Love Wimbledon was formed in April 2012, funded and managed by the business community to promote and enhance the town centre. Economy: the car-sharing company Zipcar has its UK headquarters in Wimbledon. Other notable companies and charitable organisations with head offices in Wimbledon include CIPD, Ipswich, United Response, and the GMB Trade Union. The Tennis Championships. In the 1870s, at the bottom of the hill on land between the railway line and Whirlpool Road, the All England Croquet Club had begun to hold its annual championships. But the popularity of croquet was waning as the new sport of lawn tennis began to spread, and after initially setting aside just one of its lawns for tennis, the club decided to hold its first lawn tennis championship in July 1877. By 1922, the popularity of tennis had grown to the extent that the club's small ground could no longer cope with the numbers of spectators, and the renamed All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club moved to new grounds close to Wimbledon Park. Wimbledon historian Richard Millward recounts how King George V opened the new courts. He gave 3 blows on a gong, the tarpaulins were removed, the first match started, and the rain came down. The club's old grounds continued to be used as the sports ground for Wimbledon High School. Sport. Although probably best known as the home of tennis, this was not the first sport to bring international fame to Wimbledon. Football. Wimbledon has also been well known for another period of sporting fame. From a small, long-established non-league team, Wimbledon Football Club had, from 1977, climbed quickly through the ranks of the Football League structure, reaching the highest national professional league in 1986 and winning the FA Cup against Liverpool in 1988. However, the proximity of other more established teams, such as Chelsea and Fulham, and its small ground, meant that the club struggled to increase its fan base to the size needed to maintain a top-flight team. In 2000 the team was relegated from the top division of English football after 14 years. Wimbledon moved into a stadium at Plough Lane in 1912 and played there for 79 years, until beginning a ground share with Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park near Croydon, as their progress through the Football League meant that redeveloping Plough Lane to the required modern standards was impractical. The stadium stood dormant for 10 years until it was finally demolished in 2001. A housing development now occupies the site. In May 2002, an FA commission controversially allowed the owners of the club to relocate 70 miles north to the town of Milton Keynes in Buckinghamshire, despite vehement fan protests. This represented a previously unheard-of acceptance by the FA of American-style sports team franchising, and the decision was universally criticised. As soon as the Football Association approved this move in May 2002, former Wimbledon FC supporters founded their own replacement club, the semi-professional AFC Wimbledon, and the club's support overwhelmingly shifted to the new team, who in their second and third seasons of existence earned successive promotions to the first then Premier divisions of the Isthmian League. The club also won the Combined Counties League Premier Challenge Cup in 2004 and the Surrey Senior Cup in 2005 to complete consecutive league and cup doubles, one of which finishing the season unbeaten in the league. Another great achievement by the Wimbledon Independent Supporters Association saw the return of the patrimony of Wimbledon FC. In 2007, to care of Merton Council, there is now a permanent display in Morden Library. In 2008 and 2009, AFC Wimbledon earned 2 more promotions, via the Conference South into the Conference Premier. On May 21, 2011, promotion to the Football League was achieved when AFC Wimbledon won their Conference Premier playoff against Luton Town on penalty kicks at City of Manchester Stadium. This put Wimbledon back into English Football League, a remarkable achievement in such a short time. They are now only separated by 1 division from the much maligned MK Dons. Rifle shooting. In the 1860s, the newly formed National Rifle Association held its first competition on Wimbledon Common. The association and the annual competition grew rapidly, and by the early 1870s, rifle ranges were established on the Common. In 1878 the competitions were lasting 2 weeks and attracting nearly 2,500 competitors, housed in temporary camps set up across the Common. By the 1880s, however, the power and range of rifles had advanced to the extent that shooting in an increasingly populated area was no longer considered safe. The last meeting was held in 1889 before the NRA moved to Psley in Surrey. Horse riding. Wimbledon Village Stables is the oldest recorded riding stables in England. The late Richard Millward M.A., a renowned local historian, researched the background of horses in Wimbledon over the years and found that the first recorded stables belonged to the Lord of the Manor, and are detailed in the Estate Euro unregistered trademark S accounts of 1236-37. Stables on the current site, behind the Dog and Fox pub in the High Street, were founded in 1915 by William Kirkpatrick and named Ilcott Stables. William Euro unregistered trademark S daughter Jean took over on his retirement and continued to visit the stables until her death in 2005. From 1969 Ilcott Stables was leased to Colin Crawford, and when it came up for sale in 1980 it was renamed Wimbledon Village Stables. It is now approved by both the British Horse Society Association of British Riding Schools and offers horse riding lessons and hacks on Wimbledon Common and Richmond Park. Horse racing. In 1792 the Reverend Daniel Lysons published The Environs of London, being an historical account of the towns, villages, and hamlets, within 12 miles of that capital, in which he wrote, "In the early part of the present century there were annual races upon this common, which had then a King's Plate." However, he gives no further details and does not say how successful the horse racing was or how long it lasted. Motorcycle Speedway at Wimbledon Stadium. For many years Wimbledon Stadium has been host to greyhound racing as well as stock car racing and speedway. Speedway began at Wimbledon Stadium in 1928 and the local team, the Dons, was very successful over the decades. The team started out in 1929 as members of the Southern League and operated until the Second World War. The track reopened in 1946 and the Dons operated in the top flight for many years. In the 1950s the track was home to two world champions in Ronnie Moore and Barry Briggs. In the Dons' last season, 2005, the team finished second in the National Conference League. However, following the collapse of lease renewal talks between the Speedway promoters and the Greyhound Racing Association due to the high increase in rent required by the GRA, the team were wound up. Greyhound racing and stock car racing continued to take place. Running. There is an active running club in Wimbledon called the Windmilers. The club includes some top athletes as well as beginners. A park run is held every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. which sees in excess of 300 runners complete 5 km. The course starts and finishes at the Windmill. Prior to park run a similar event was held known as the Wimbledon Common Time Trial. New Wimbledon Theatre. The New Wimbledon Theatre is a Grade II listed Edwardian theatre built by J.B. Mulhall and is the Wimbledon Theatre on the site of a large house with spacious grounds. The theatre was designed by Cecil Aubrey Maisie and Roy Young. The theatre opened its doors on December 26, 1910 with the pantomime Jack and Jill. It was very popular between the wars, with appearances by Gracie Fields, Sybil Thorndike, Ivan Novello, Mark Cover and Noel Coward. Lionel Bart's Oliver and Half a Sixpence starring Tommy Steele received their world premiere at the theatre in the 1960s before transferring to the West End. The theatre was saved from redevelopment when it was bought by the Ambassador Theatre Group in 2004. With several refurbishments, most notably in 1991 and 1998, it retains its Baroque and Adamesque internal features. The golden statue atop the dome is Laetitia, the Roman goddess of gaiety, and was an original fixture back in 1910. Laetitia is holding a laurel crown as a symbol of celebration. The statue was removed during the Second World War as it was thought to be a direction-finding device for German bombers, and replaced in 1991. Polka Children's Theatre. Polka Theatre is a Childrena Euro unregistered trademark S theatre in Wimbledon, London Borough of Merton, for children aged 0 to Euro 13. The theatre contains two performance spaces, a 300-seat main auditorium and a 70-seat studio dedicated to early years performances. As well as the theatre, Polka also has a creative learning studio, a garden, an outdoor playground, indoor play area, exhibition spaces and a cafe. Polka is a producing theatre which also tours shows nationally and internationally, and provides a range of education and community engagement programs for children. Polka Theatre is a registered charity and an Arts Council England national portfolio organisation. It is also funded by the London Borough of Merton and a number of private charitable trusts and foundations, individuals and commercial companies. The theatre opened in November 1979. Transport: Wimbledon Station, Wimbledon Chase Railway Station, Rains Park Railway Station, Wimbledon Park, South Wimbledon. Literature: in the world of literature, Wimbledon provides the principal setting for several comic novels by author Nigel Williams as well as for Elizabeth Beresford's series of children's stories about the Wombles. Wimbledon was also the site where the sixth Martian invasion cylinder landed in H. G. Wells' book The War of the Worlds and is mentioned briefly in his books, The Time Machine and When the Sleeper Wakes. Notable residents: Khalid Abdullah, actor, The Kite Runner and United 93, Bob Arcells, former associate of Ugandan Presidents Milton Obote and Idi Amin, Ben Barnes, actor, The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, Joseph Bazalgette, civil engineer. His creation in the mid-19th century of the sewer network for central London eliminated the incidence of cholera epidemics. Raymond Briggs, cartoonist, James Brune-Lees, engineer, lived at Argyle Lodge, Parkside. Josephine Butler, feminist campaigner of the Victorian era, blue plaque at 8 North View, Wimbledon Common. George Edward Katz, World War I Victoria Cross recipient, Duke and Duchess of Cannizzaro. Ernst Boris Chain, joint winner of the 1945 Nobel Prize in Medicine for the discovery of penicillin. Blue plaque at 9 North View, Wimbledon Common. Mavis Cheek, novelist born and brought up in Wimbledon. Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, close friend of Queen Anne. Norman Coburn, actor, played Donald Fisher in Australian soap opera Home and Away. Annette Crosbie, actress, screen wife of One Foot in the Grave's victim Drew. Sandy Denny, singer, born at the Nelson Hospital. Lawrence Doherty, winner of 13 Wimbledon tennis championships and 2 Olympic gold medals. Reginald Doherty, winner of 12 Wimbledon tennis championships and 3 Olympic gold medals. Hugh Dowding, commander of a RAF Fighter Command during the Battle of Britain in 1940. Blue plaque at 3 St Mary's Road. Henry Dundas, Viscount Melville, Home Secretary and Secretary of State for Walter William Pitt the Younger, resident of Cannizzaro House. Mark Edgerly Smith, composer. Ford Maddox Ford, author. Works include The Good Soldier and Parade's End. John William Godward, painter. Charles Patrick Graves, journalist. Robert Graves, poet. Victoria Hamilton, actress. George Hamilton Gordon, 4th Earl of Aberdeen, Prime Minister 1852-55. Resident of Cannizzaro House, Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia, guest at a house in Parkside while in exile from Ethiopia owing to the Italian invasion. His statue stands in Cannizzaro Park. Georgette Heyer, novelist, was born and grew up in Wimbledon. She wrote her first 5 novels there. A later novel, Pastel, is set in a suburb very like Wimbledon. Leslie Hall-Bellisher, 1st Baron Hall-Bellisher, while Minister of Transport, 1934-7, he introduced the driving test and the Bellisher beacon. Then Secretary of State for War, 1937 Euro 40, John Horne-Tooke, politician, lived at Chester House on Wimbledon Common. Thomas Hughes, author of Tom Brown's Schooldays which was written in Wimbledon. James Hunt, 1976 Formula One world champion. Hetty King, famous music hall artiste and male impersonator. A blue commemorative plaque was erected on her home in Palmerston Road, Wimbledon by the Music Hall Guild of Great Britain and America in November 2010. Don Lang, Britain's answer to Bill Haley. With his band, a mainstay of Britain's first television rock and roll programme 6-5 Special, Alva Liddell, BBC radio announcer. His voice was well known during the Second World War. Frederick Marryat, author, blue plaque at Gothic Lodge, 6 Woodays Road. Also lived at Wimbledon House. Sir Joseph Norman Lockyer, scientist and astronomer. Joint discoverer of helium. John Lyde Brown, director of the Bank of England. Resident of Cannizzaro House. His collection of classical sculpture was acquired by Catherine II of Russia in 1787 and is held by the Hermitage Museum. Tony McGuinness, musician. Above and Beyond. Thomas Ralph Merton, physicist. Marcus Mumford, musician. Mumford and Sons. John Murray III, Publisher. Significant publications include Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species. Murray built a house called Newstead on 4 acres at Somerset Road. Lord Horatio Nelson, Admiral. Nelson's estate, Merton Place, included part of Wimbledon at the eastern end of the Broadway, though, strictly he was a resident of Merton, the neighbouring parish. F. W. J. Palmer, engineer born here. Michelle Paver, author, Chronicles of Ancient Darkness. Alan Purdue, football manager. Charles Pepys, 1st Earl of Cottenham, Lord Chancellor. Sir William Henry Preece, developed English telephone system. Blue plaque at Gothic Lodge, 6 Woodhays Road. Oliver Reed, actor. Margaret Rutherford, actress. Blue plaque at 4 Berkeley Place. Arthur Schopenhauer, philosopher. Blue plaque at Eagle House where he lived in 1803. Ridley Scott, film director. Films include Blade Runner and Gladiator. Brian Sewell, art critic and media personality. Joseph Toynbee, surgeon. Blue plaque at 49 Wimbledon Parkside. Arnold Toynbee, economic historian. Blue plaque at 49 Wimbledon Parkside. Ralph Tubbs, architect. His buildings include the Dome of Discovery and Charing Cross Hospital. Charles Watson Wentworth, 2nd Marquess of Rockingham, twice Prime Minister. William Wilberforce, 19th-century anti-slavery campaigner. Amenities, major public open spaces. Cannizaro Park, Richmond Park, Wimbledon Common, Wimbledon Park, museums, Southside House, Wimbledon Lawn Tennis Museum, Wimbledon Museum, Wimbledon Windmill, schools. Places of worship. References. Bibliography, Bartlett, William A., History of Antiquities of the Parish of Wimbledon, Simpkin, Marshall, and Co., 1865, Brown, John W., Licenses History of Wimbledon, Local History Reprints, 1991, ISBN 1-85699-021-4, Millward, Richard, Historic Wimbledon, Caesars Camp to Centre Court, The Windrush Press and Fielders of Wimbledon, 1989. ISBN 0-900075-16-3, Millward, Richard, New Short History of Wimbledon, Wimbledon Society, 1989, external links, local authorities, merton.gov.uk. Community, 1, wimbledon-village.com, History, British-history.ac.uk. The Environs of London, Volume 1, County of Surrey, 1792, Wimbledon, ppA 519 €, 540, Daniel Licence, British-history.ac.uk. A History of the County of Surrey, Volume 4, 1912, Parishes, Wimbledon, ppA 120 €, 125, H. E. Malden.